Did you see? So interesting. There's an interesting thread went out on Twitter this week about Elon Musk and his attempts to buy Twitter, and it was written by a guy who used to run Reddit.
Can I just say this before we get to the thread? So
Yeah,
I may even have evidence of this. That might be in one of my improv shows but definitely in my show notes when I was trying to write Well Logical, I had this bit all about billionaires going to space. It didn't end up making the show. But one of the bits, and maybe we even had like half of this conversation on a TOFOP, which was about if I was a billionaire, I would never go on Twitter. But in the jokes that I'd written about it, I'd be like, actually, if I was a billionaire, I would buy Twitter. And I would then use it to fuck with Twitter. And then 3 months later, that's what, I'm so glad that wasn't my material because it would have been ruined by Elon Musk doing that exact same thing.
Well, it's strange, isn't it? What is and this thread is really interesting because this thread is all about so Elon Musk's motivation apparently is he feels like, Twitter is not democratic enough. It's not recognizing enough voices. So this guy who started Reddit, he said, look, here's my experiences of trying to set up some kind of democratized social media forum where everyone can come express their views. He's gone, it just doesn't work. Because every group feels like they are being censored. Every group feels like they're being silenced. And also the moderation of online content is virtually impossible. There are just not enough people and not enough eyeballs to stay across stuff. So yeah, you might be on the right and you're like, well, this leftist, called for my murder and how come they got away with it? Well, that just slipped through that just got slipped through. But also a white supremacist also called for someone to get murdered as well. It is an imperfect... It is an imperfect system. But my question is, what does Elon Musk have to complain about? Does he feel his voice is not being heard? Does he feel like he's not getting enough publicity?
Well, one of the jokes that I had in this thing that I wrote was they shouldn't be able to go on the free apps. If you want the public to know your opinion when you're a billionaire, you should have to do what people traditionally did and buy a newspaper, buy a media company. That's what billionaires normally do to get it out there. So I guess that is actually just the equivalent of what he's doing. He's doing something that has been done by billionaires throughout the ages, which is we need to control the media because if we control the media, we control the narrative around the fact that Elon Musk owns a disproportionate amount of wealth. That is regardless of any good that he brings to the world, there is no way that the world benefits from somebody disproportionately having that much wealth. And the best way for him to control that conversation is to control the conversation.
Yeah. But every time, couldn't he just start his own, to start Musk chat or something like that, where people can just go
that sounds gross. Well, Musk chat.
It does sound disgusting. But there's dating agencies for wealthy people.
So you're talking are we talking sugar daddy arrangements?
Sugar daddy.
Or are we talking about...
so rich people can go on and converse about being super wealthy and super wealthy first world problems without being shamed by the wider public. Because that's what it feels like he's rebelling against. He wants to protect his business interests and stuff. But I also think there's an element of him which is I don't like the fact that people call me a scumbag and that, I'm wasting my money when I could be donating to better causes. I want to hang out with other people who are also like me, who just like spending their money on kind of things that make them happy.
Nobody's like you. You have more than everybody else in the world. There is nobody else like you. You can't have a peer. Elon Musk is now even disproportionately wealthy compared to Jeff Bezos. There are Elon Musk problems that Bezos doesn't face. They can't even have a chat backstage about what it's like to be disproportionately wealthy. So, but you shouldn't need, it's sad to me that this is a reflection that why we shouldn't be giving these people all this fucking money because they're not geniuses. They're not, these absolute, they can have moments of genius, but they are not more disproportionately talented than the next person that they should have so much more than the next person.
Yeah. Well, especially too when a lot of it's inherited wealth as well. If it had been Elon down the mines or whatever, his family got their money, whatever shady shit in South Africa that they were doing to amass their fortune. Even if his grandfather had been the one, but I doubt his grandfather was the one actually pulling the diamonds from the stone.
No, it wasn't.
It's very...
Yeah, we had the one ethical South African diamond mine.
Yeah. I mean, it does feel like that is where the disconnect happened, and it's also to this American thing as well of like they had this kind of hero worship where it's like, you know, they Australians, we love tearing down a hero. Like, you know, we're suspicious of people who elevate themselves above others. Where in America, it's a culture that kind of like celebrates, you know, the rags to riches story and anyone can become president and blah blah blah. And so, you know, when that wealth just becomes it's a evidence of your skill or evidence of your your work ethic or whatever, when so often it is just a case of it's evidence that you were born you were born with the right surname.
Right. And the fact that, like, I think in Australia there is more of a connection between, like, if you got wealthy or successful for doing something is more admired than, like, you know, that idea in America where if you're just rich, people almost are like, how you got to be rich is really very much a secondary question. Like, the cool thing is that you're rich.
Yeah. Yeah, you met a lot of those people, like, I don't know how many you met when you're in LA, but I met a lot of like producers, and they were just like guys and girls who had come from money and were now just in LA with money. Like they'd been given a bank account and a credit card and told to, you know, do what they want with it. So they're out trying to make things. And so they're, you know, throwing parties so they can meet celebrities and studio people so they can just put their money into something and feel like they're part of something, but they're not actually talented. Like they don't, you know, they have the ability to fund talent and to attract talent, but they don't necessarily have the talent themselves. But that is kind of like a career path for super wealthy. Like in Australia, we don't really have enough of an industry for super wealthy people to kind of like take that risk. Like it's very hard to raise private finance for music festivals, film production, all that kind of stuff in Australia. Whereas in America, there is a lot of that independent financing because people just want to meet Julia Roberts. It's kind of a...
And people don't have
it's a legitimate like business strategy.
But people aren't willing to get their checkbook out for Ada Nicodemo? I would have thought that, really? No, I would have thought there'd be like at least some, I mean, maybe not to the scale of a Julia Roberts, right? But I imagine that like there'd be some independently wealthy people who'd just be like, you know, I grew up watching Ada on TV and I'd like to, you know, do an Ada.
Hang out with Ada.
Yeah, I'd like to hang out with Ada, so I'm going to put together an Ada project.
Yeah, you know what? There probably is. I know when Gemma was attached to a project a couple of years ago in America, like an independent film, and when she got the script, she was like, you know, it's okay. It needs some work, maybe with like if we do another couple passes. And the manager who bought the script said, the one caveat is the girl who wrote this script, she has to be in it. And Jem was like, okay, fine. Well, what's her experience? It's like, well, she hasn't really done anything. And Jem's like, well, this is a really, like, you know, this requires like a really skilled actor. Like it's a pretty big part. You know, maybe we can look at like creating like a supporting role or something that's sort of more suited to her level of experience. And then the more that they got through the development, the more that like Jem started to realize that this girl actually hadn't done anything and possibly hadn't even written this script. But her husband was very, very wealthy and had wanted to give her a film. But it was amazing because they literally had $1 million to dangle in front of, they were trying to get like, you know, a big name actor to get into this and that would get the ball rolling. But just that they, as much as Jem tried to get them to rewrite the script and change it, they wouldn't do it. They kept sort of insisting that it had to stay a certain way. And it was all based around the fact that this woman, this was her project that was being funded by her partner. And it was like, Jem left it and we sort of vaguely have tracked it, and there keeps being announcements. They keep getting directors attached and then a star, and then it just falls over because everyone is running to the same problem, which is like, we can't put this person in this like, even for $1 million. Like even for $1 million, we can't do it. We're either not going to be able to attract professional talent to work with you, or it's just people sort of just see the red flags. Just like, well, if this is what you're asking now, like you're already putting restrictions on now, when we actually start rolling the cameras, what other demands are going to start? You know, and agents and managers, that's their job, is to keep their clients separated from that kind of quagmire.
Yeah, it's incredible, isn't it? That sort of super wealth. So what does that mean for Elon Musk? I think Elon Musk he's at the point where he's so wealthy that he's like, if I want to buy Twitter, I should just buy Twitter. And I think that there's some business, obviously, opportunities for him in buying Twitter. Like, there's no real downside to him buying Twitter because he can control narratives. He can use it to continue to manipulate the stock market like he tends to do and all these sort of things. So I imagine for him, like, yeah, and there's probably an opportunity for him to like rebrand it a little bit more in a free speech sense. It seems to be what he would like to do.
It annoys me. I use Twitter a lot. I'd say that's my social media du jour. That's the one I enjoy the most, the one that I check the most. And it's so kind of like cliche for people to come on and go like, I fucking hate this website and it's a fucking dumpster fire and blah, 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 blah. But they're always fucking on it. They're always on it to tell you how much they fucking hate it. And it's like, I accept the fact, I understand it's annoying and it's distracting and social media is ruining our brains. But it's kind of like, I know that if I have a few beers, that's not the best thing for me. If I have a lot of beers, that's even worse for me. So I have accepted the fact that I'm going to do this thing that is not great for my health, but it improves my life in other ways. It gives me a point of distraction. It enables me to promote our podcast, all this kind of stuff. But this idea that somehow it needs to be changed, I just think it is what it is. It is a fucking dumpster fire, but it's also this great tool. You know, that's how people in the floods have been updating on where to fucking send help and reaching out, because there certainly hasn't been any fucking coordinated response. So
well, what you say is the thing that about Twitter more than anything, and this is the thing that nobody can actually handle about it, which is your experience is entirely of your own curation. So if you're following a whole bunch of like terrible accounts, then that's your fault. Like, it literally is a website where you go on and choose people, resources to follow. There is a whole bunch of different ways that you can follow and engage with them. And your experience is entirely of your own making. Like the easiest, Twitter doesn't need to change everything. You just need to unfollow a few people and follow a few more, like get your balance of your account out better. Like, I mean, for example, during political times, I'll follow a lot more journalists than I would ordinarily. But as soon as the election's over, I'll unfollow a whole bunch of those journalists again, because I just don't need to see on a daily basis like the updates of those things that I just don't need to engage in.
Yeah, there's one comedian that I followed, and then after a while I was like, oh, I'm going to unfollow because I just was getting weary of the text. And then I was like, oh, you know what? I'll follow again. And then I realized after a day I made a mistake, so I unfollowed, and then I got blocked. Because obviously they were watching me jump back and forth, and they're like, fuck this guy. He's either a fan or he's not. And so I was like, oh yeah, fuck it. I'll just stay offline. There's certain aspects of their work that I like, but there's other aspects that I don't need in my feed all the time. So
it was like Dave Hughes was trying to cull his Instagram, the people he followed on Instagram, and he rang me up on the radio to like basically did this thing where he sent out like an Instagram direct message to people, and then if people didn't respond, he like got them on the radio to say, I'm going to drop you from my Instagram things. And I was like, mate, drop me. Absolutely drop me. I don't want my friends to be following me on my social media because my social media is mostly work related. So like, you don't need to see me promoting my shows. You don't need me to see me promoting other people's shows or anything like that. That is not for you.
Have you started any friendships on social media that have bled into the real world, where it's like, someone starts following you start following them, you like each other's posts, you start communicating, and there's like a online friendship, and then has it become a real world friendship?
I mean, I think that's hard for me to say external to the media world in which we live. So like there's so many comedians or other people in the media or whatever, like philosophy guests that I've made connections with solely online originally, and then that's become a podcast and then a friendship. But I don't know if there's been independently of that many that I could identify. Mate, you know what? There's a few that like where social media has been pretty like, I mean, someone like Craig Coombs, for example. If it hadn't been for social media, like we wouldn't have the opportunity to have the bond and friendship that we have. Like a lot of that has been conducted through, I mean, we text each other now, but we still communicate a fair amount of the time through social media.
Yeah, there's a couple. There's a few people lately who I only know through social media, through their social media accounts. And then we've been messaging and stuff. And And one of them was like, hey man, well, next time you're in town, hit me up and we'll grab a bite to eat or something to drink. And I'm like, I don't know. I don't know about that. Like, I've enjoyed the separation, you know, and I'm just like, I don't know if I want to take that next step. I don't know if this is a real, I mean, I don't make new friends really anyway, even in real life, like person to person. I'm a pretty hard nut to crack. And so the idea of them like having to get over the hump, like, I think if you do invite someone onto a podcast or something, that's still like another distance away, like especially now that we're doing it via Zoom. Like even before Zoom we were doing it in person, it was still a bit of a risk to get in the room with that person. But now, fuck yeah, I'll just like hit someone up and say, hey, would you like to do my show? And we can just do it like this, and it's absolutely fine. But I'm like, I don't know, man. Like I just don't, I feel like, you know, dating apps didn't exist when I was single, and it's the same thing of if suddenly I was single and I wanted to meet someone again, would I use a dating app? Because my brain isn't wired to connect those two worlds. And I have met people in real life that have only known online and been kind of like underwhelmed by their real personalities. I'm like, I really like the way you write.
Yeah.
Or I really like the things you post. But you as a person, I don't think we're gonna be friends.
Well, I'm not a big poster. Like I was obviously early in the days of social media. Like I used to use it a lot, but I haven't used it in an active way really for years.
You're a big retweeter.
Yeah. Like, you know, but it takes a lot for me to actually, you know, contribute something to the conversation. Because so often particularly in the last couple of years, you know, you've seen people have complete meltdowns and just like the debate engagement online is just at such ferocious levels on all sides that it doesn't feel like a healthy place. And the few times when I've like, you know, you get caught at that moment where you bite back or you respond to something. There is not one of those that I've walked away from and gone, well, that was a good use of my time. I feel heaps better that I engaged in that.
My dignity is intact.
Yeah.
To see the full video, join our Patreon.
Patreon.com/TOFOP.